So I wanted to actually take you through those 5 stages, the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages of grief and how they actually play out during a divorce, especially during a divorce with a narcissist, during the 5 stages of a divorce with a narcissist in particular. Okay, so what do the 5 stages of a divorce with a narcissist look like? Number one is denial. So when you are dealing with a divorce from a narcissist, you are dealing with denial. First of all, you deal with the fear, that fear of what's going to happen, that catastrophe of what's going to happen. Because when you are dealing with a divorce from a narcissist, you know what's coming. You know that down the pike, they're going to turn against you. You know you're going to become public enemy number one. You know that potentially going to expose you and try to turn the world against you and all of those things, right? And so you know that potentially emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of those things, it's going to be pure hell. And what's going to happen to you, what's going to happen to your children, what's going to happen to you financially, and you're imagining all the worst possible things. And so maybe you are in denial at the beginning about all of it because you just don't even want to think about it. So you kind of deny that this is where your relationship is. You think maybe it's not so bad, or maybe I can live with this, or maybe it's not so bad all the time, or maybe this person can change. So you're kind of in denial about the relationship being as bad as you think that it is, right? So that's probably the first stage of divorce. And then the second stage is that anger, where you think, why are you like this? And why do you have to be so horrible? And why couldn't you just change? And why did you have to mess things up? Why did you have to cheat? And could you have stripped so much of my life away? And why did I waste my life on you? And you're just so angry at this person for maybe messing up your children's lives, just everything. Maybe you're resentful about the fact that they didn't make more money or that they wasted money on things at this stage where you just maybe feel entitled. Maybe you just feel like they need to pay for everything that they've done to you. And I'm telling you, a lot of people, they get stuck in this stage for a very long time. A lot of people never get out of this stage. I think a lot of times people feel like if they forgive, or if they move on, or if they get out of this stage, like somehow the narcissist got away with it in some way. Like if they let it go, then they got away with it somehow. And that's just not the case. I mean, you need to move on for you. This is not about them. This is about you not living with the venom, not living with the poison, not living with that toxicity within you. That's number two. This is that anger stage that people live in for a very long time. And let me tell you, there's a big difference between wanting what's equitable and what's allowed under the law and wanting to apply the law and being fine with that, allowing that to happen, and not allowing guilt to be part of that, not allowing being afraid to be part of that, not allowing emotion to be part of that, just allowing the law to be applied without anything else to be part of that. Okay, so that's the second part. That's anger. The next one is bargaining. And bargaining is where you might go back into, well, this is where it can be sort of dangerous, because this is where your narcissist, especially when you're divorcing a narcissist, your narcissist might start getting nice again. They might start hoovering. And so you might start getting weak again too. You might start going, well, maybe this might work out, or maybe it's not going to be so bad, or maybe we might be able to be friends, or maybe we might be able to somehow, some way, either get back together, or maybe we can be amicable, or maybe I can get them to see my value, or maybe if I just give in on certain points, they'll start to give in for me. And this is a trap I see people often fall into, especially in negotiating with narcissists. Sometimes people think, well, if I give a lot on the front end, they'll see how great I'm being and they'll also give in. That definitely is never the case, by the way, ever. They just take, and then it just goes into the ether, and they'll be like, yeah, and your point is what? That never helps you in any way, by the way. And they don't acknowledge you. They don't see your value. I mean, that doesn't help you. And so that you go through this bargaining stage, and a lot of times that whole honeymoon phase is often met with rejection. You try to get them to see your side or whatever, and it doesn't work out. And then it ends up feeling worse, and you end up feeling even worse than you did before. It's almost like you've been rejected again. And so it ends up where you feel even more lonely or more sad or something like that. The one thing I do want to say is I have a couple of videos. One is on self-care when you're coping with a narcissist. I would definitely check that out. The other one is I have a video on self-care when coping with a narcissist. That's an interview that I did with Amy Newmark, who's the president of the Chicken Soup for the Soul entities. And she had done a book on it, on self-care. And I would definitely highly recommend that interview as well. Great, great stuff. Check out both of those videos on taking care of yourself and making sure that you are doing what you need to take care of yourself. And I want you to put that in the comments right now, that I take care of myself. Put that in the comments right now. I take care of myself. Just to remind yourself that you do that, and you will do that throughout this process, because it is so hard sometimes to remember to do that, especially during this difficult time. So after you've gone through denial, anger, and bargaining, now you go into depression. And this is one of the hardest ones, because you've gone through denial, anger, and bargaining. In some ways, they're like easier, even though they're difficult to go through. They're easier than the depression, because the depression is the lowest point, honestly. This is where the divorce is probably over and you just are feeling lonely, you're feeling sad, you're probably beating yourself up. There's a lot of the Monday morning quarterbacking of, did I waste my life? Did the person ever love me? Did I give up too much in the divorce? I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have signed that. Maybe I had a terrible lawyer. That other person had a better lawyer than I did. I spent too much money on the divorce. I gave up too much time sharing. There's always this whole thing about, I should have left 10 years earlier. I never should have married the person. There's all this regret and la, 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 la stuff going on. Don't go down that rabbit hole. You cannot do anything about the past. It's not going to give you any sense of satisfaction. It's not going to go anywhere but down. That level of vibration is horrible for you. And don't even go being around people who are going to serve that kind of conversation, because it's not going to help you. If they're saying, oh, I saw your ex and they're with this other person and they're, off having this great life. That's not going to help you either. What's going to help you is you starting to create your new life, starting to create new memories and all that sort of thing. Because that first year, where it's a year of firsts, where it's different, it's the first holiday where it's something different each time, or you used to always do Sunday brunches and now you don't anymore, or whatever. And you're just having to create your own maybe new set of friends or whatever. It's difficult. And so starting to create your own new life, your own new future, where you feel whole and complete on your own, is going to be absolutely critical. Developing your own set of interests, your own set of friends, join a book club or join a runner's club, or start something where you're cultivating your own life, where you start to feel whole and complete. Join a meditation group or something like that, where you start to do things for your own peace of mind, where you start to feel whole and complete on your own. That will do wonders for you. Really making sure that you have your own support system in place is going to be absolutely critical. And then the next level, that's going to lead into the acceptance. You'll know you're into that acceptance phase when you can see your ex and not feel any emotion about it other than, oh, there's my ex. Hello, goodbye, whatever. I don't feel anything around you other than there's my ex. And you've now pursued your own life. You now have your own life, and your ex has his or her own new life, and everybody has gone their own ways, and it's all fine, well, and good. And you need to create that space for yourself. Those are the 5 stages of divorce with a narcissist. And that's the most important thing. When you can get through that, when you can get to that level of acceptance, that is where you know that you have moved on, that you've gone all the way through, that you have moved through all 5 stages, and you have become who you really are supposed to be. Your soul knows that you were born for more. Your soul knows that you were meant for more. So let's talk about the 11 sneaky things that narcissists do in divorce. So, first of all, before we get to that, you need to understand something about narcissists. And that is that with a narcissist, you're either for them or against them. And if they find out that you're against them, once you're into that discard phase, then you become public enemy number 1. And now they need to take you down. And the other thing that you need to understand is that they get narcissistic supply from jerking you around. So while you might think, what is it that they want? I'll just give it to them. What they want is to jerk you around. They get supply from that. And so when you just say, I'll just give it to them, what you're basically saying is, I, I want this over. And if you're trying to make it be over, then you're trying to say, I'm going to take away a source of supply from them, which they don't want to happen. Get it? So that's why that option of just giving them whatever it is that they want and walking away is really an illusion. It's a trick, because they will constantly move goalposts and do all sorts of things because they get supply from jerking you around and intimidating you and, making the process a nightmare for you. So that's why you have to kind of approach it from a different angle. And that's what I teach you in my SLAY methodology, which stands for strategy and leverage and anticipating and focusing on you. So remember, they're difficult people anyway. They thrive on conflict anyway, even in regular life. And so when you're dealing with it in a divorce situation, you are now dealing with whoever they were on a regular basis, but on steroids. They're like 50,000 times worse. So they want to take you down before you can take them down. They want to expose you and make you look bad before you can make them look bad. It becomes this massive, huge game to them. All right. So, what kinds of things do they do? Well, I mean, it ain't good. Let's just say that. But let's go through a few of their favorites. Number one is they will lie. They're going to lie about anything. They're going to lie about everything. They're going to lie about stuff they don't even need to lie about. They're going to lie about stuff that's readily verifiable. You will be saying to yourself, how are they getting away with this? And the thing that I want you to remember is that the only person that can hold them accountable is the judge, no one else. There's no, magical fairies that come out or stormtroopers that come out in your living room that go, "Hey, you're not supposed to do that." So, when you say, how are they getting away with this? You have to remember, okay, well, who can hold this person accountable? Only the judge. And how do you get the judge to hold this person accountable? Well, you do that through filing a motion and setting it for hearing or something like that. So the only other way other than that you can get them to do something that you want them to do is through actually creating leverage and letting them feel threatened, letting them feel like they're going to be exposed in some way in the negotiation process. But anyway, I'm digressing. Anyway, here we are. So they will lie. They're going to lie. They're going to lie in motions. They're going to lie in pleadings. They're going to lie in depositions. They're going to lie to the court. They're going to lie to the lawyers. They're going to lie to mediators. They're going to lie about everything. Don't be surprised when they lie. Just like, oh, yeah, there they are lying, and then use it to your advantage. You can use it to your advantage. When they go and lie like that, you're going to go, yay, thank you. Thank you very much, because that will become part of your leverage. Got it? All right. And by the way, if you know that they are big, fat, hairy liars, give me a total liars in the comments right now. All right. Ready for number two? Number two is they will obstruct. They will withhold information. They will not give you the financial documents that they're supposed to, or they'll give you some of them, or they'll give you all the months except July. It's so annoying, but that's what they will do. I know it's crazy, but they just do that just to annoy you or to withhold information or to try to hide information, or they want to make you work for it and they want it to cost you more money. So that's number two. Number three is they will manipulate text messages, emails. I've seen people, where the narcissist will send a confirmation email for an agreement that, you know, obviously didn't take place. So annoying, right? They will twist everything you do or say. All right. And I want you to remember that everything you put your hand to is a potential trial exhibit. So if you don't want to see it again, do not hit send, do not push post or whatever it is. And if you want more on how to respond powerfully to text messages, definitely check out my video on kick-ass responses to narcissist texts for sure. All right. Ready? Number four. Number four sneaky things narcissists do in divorce is they use threats and intimidation tactics. They're going to say things they want to trigger you. They know how to trigger you. So they're going to say things like, "You're never going to see your kids again. I'm going to put you in jail. I'm going to accuse you of this. I'm going to make sure that you have no money and you're living on the streets." They know what your worst fears are, so they push on those. They want to trigger you. All right, just don't fall into that. I mean, most of the time when I was talking to clients on a regular basis, I would be spending a lot of my time dispelling myth. 95% of the time, their threats are just a bunch of crap. Just remember that. All right, number five. Line up flying monkeys. Oh, yes, especially the coverts. You know how they love them, some flying monkeys. Yes, they do. And they love to fly, that, get those flying monkeys to believe all of their lies and how great they are and how horrible you are. and smear you. It's part of the whole smear campaign thing. And I do have a whole video on how to shut down a narcissist smear campaign. If you want to check that out, you can. Number six. Number six is they will use the court system as a sword, file all kinds of stuff, which leads me to number seven, which is they will file unnecessary motions. This is part of using the court system as the sword. They will just file all kinds of stuff to drive you absolutely insane and make sure you're spending lots of money and you're always on the defense and you feel like you're a turtle on your back with their foot on you, right? Number eight, they will use children as pawns. This is the one that's like super sad, and I'm sorry to hear all the time, and I'm sorry to see when it happens, because the children are innocent victims in this, and they are not thinking about what's in the best interest of the children when they do that. So that's number eight. Number nine is that they will hide money and assets. A lot of times they've been doing that for a long time, even before the divorce started, or they will move things, or they'll put things in other people's names, or they will take cash and put it in different places, or they'll put cash with someone that they trust. Cash is hard to track down, but most of the time other monies are not as hard to track down. And a lot of times, by the way, there's not as much hidden money as you might think. You become so paranoid because they've done so much to you that you think that it's a lot worse than it is. So hopefully that makes you feel better. Next one is number 10. Number 10 is that they will ignore court orders. And again, this is where you're going to be saying, how are they getting away with this? And again, it's like, if they do that, let's say they're ordered to produce a document by a certain date according to the court. Or let me give you a different one. Let me say that they're supposed to pay child support on the first of the month, and now it's the second, third, fourth, or fifth of the month, and it hasn't been paid. You're sitting in your house going, how are they getting away with this? I want you to think that through, because the reason they got away with it so far at that point was because no one would know about it that needs to know about it, because the only person that needs to know about that is the judge. So when they ignore court orders, you need to file something to let the judge know that they ignored the court order. Whether it's a motion for contempt or a motion to compel or a show cause to, should they be held in contempt, something, whatever needs to be filed in your particular court. And sometimes there's different languaging in different courts, but if they do that, you just need to let the courts know. Don't let them get away with it. Even if you file whatever you need to file, and the hearing doesn't get set for 3 months or whatever, don't let them get away with it. You have to stay on them. You are conditioning them on how to treat you. So that's number 10. You ready for number 11? This is the last one. And this is by no means a comprehensive list, by the way. I'm quite sure that all of you guys are going to say that there's lots more. And you can definitely go ahead and comment below other ones that you've seen too. All right, ready for number 11? Number 11 is stalking, threats of violence, actual violence. Just remember that everything that you do or say can be used against you, and probably will be if you are dealing with a narcissist. Unfortunately, as I said, they're big, fat, hairy liars. So, the old expression, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. Well, that is magnified by like a million when you're dealing with a narcissist in divorce. I've seen it many, many times. I've represented them thousands of times. I've been on the other side of them. I've seen them as opposing counsel. And I've actually had to deal with a couple of pesky, awful, horrible narcissists in my own life. And so I know exactly how the mind of a narcissist works and what the psyche of a narcissist is like in the middle of a divorce. So here are a couple of the tricks that they play in divorce. Twisting everything you do or say. So every time you send them a text or an email, or you just speak to them in person, or you communicate with them in any way, or even if they hear about something that you've said, they're going to twist it. They're going to take the parts that they like. They're going to cut off other parts. They're certainly not above cutting and pasting parts of texts or emails to make it look like you said something or didn't say something. They'll do whatever they can to make you look bad and them look good. Because remember, with narcissists, they have no sense of inner value. All of their value comes from the external. They need an endless amount of what we call narcissistic supply, which is where they are boosting up their ego. And supply can come in the form of good things, such as a big house, or what I call positive things, a great job, being friends with the right people, things like that. Or it can come in the form of what I call negative things, which is causing you to feel devalued, debased, degraded, making you squirm, manipulating you. They get supply from that as well. And so that's what you see happening in a divorce. Because remember, for a narcissist, you have no value. Your value when you're in a relationship with them is just what you can do for them and what kind of value you can give to their endless need for supply. So once you've shown yourself to not want to be in a relationship with them anymore, even if they are actually in the process of doing the discard, then you have no value left for them anymore. So now you're the enemy, because when you're dealing with a narcissist, you can't just nicely walk your own direction and shake hands and just say, well, let's just let the law, dictate what's fair, and we'll just sign something and be on our way and wish each other well. It doesn't work that way with narcissists. With narcissists, you're either for them or you're against them. So that's why they're going to twist everything that you do or say. The next thing that narcissists do in divorce is obstruction. So it's crazy, because there'll be laws in every state and everywhere that you have to provide certain types of financial documents to each other, and it's mandatory, it's required, and they won't provide what's mandatory. They won't provide what's required, or they might only pick and choose what they want to provide. So, if they're supposed to provide 12 months of credit card statements, you'll just see them provide 10 months worth, but suddenly July is missing or September is missing, and then you have to try to go back and try to get it. And all of this is just very frustrating. And a lot of times my clients will end up saying to me, how is he getting away with this? How is she getting away with this? Well, something that I remind people all the time is that there are no like divorce fairies that just pop out in the middle of people's living rooms and go, hey, you're not allowed to do that. Or, hey, you're supposed to provide that document. How come you're not doing it? So they're going to get away with it until they can't get away with it anymore. And what happens is they will no longer get away with it when somebody brings it in front of the judge. Because remember, the only person who has any power to order somebody to do something is a judge. No one else, or the police, if you call the police because they've done something criminal. But when you're talking about civil actions, you can just push everything through the judge. So you end up filing a lot of motions, and motions to compel and motions to enforce and things like that, so that they produce the documents that they're supposed to produce. So that's number two trick that they play, is obstruction. Another thing that you'll see narcissists do is ignoring court orders. And that's kind of what I was just talking about with ignoring laws, but they also ignore court orders. And it's just so mind-boggling sometimes, because, what I've seen people do sometimes is early on, they'll come up with a parenting plan, or maybe you come up with an agreement that's signed that becomes a court order that says you're not supposed to introduce new significant others to the children. And, lo and behold, there they are introducing their new girlfriends or new boyfriends to the children. And that's a violation of now a court order. And so you have to file a motion to get it enforced, or ask the court to issue a show cause order as to why they shouldn't be held in contempt for violating that court order. But the thing with narcissists is
Narcissists are street fighters. They will fight dirty, and they'll do as much as they possibly can that they think that they can get away with. There's really no bar that's too low, or no thing that's too far. As long as they're pretty sure that they can get away with it, or even if they're so sometimes arrogant about it, or so distorted in their thinking that they think that they'll get away with things even if they don't necessarily end up getting away with things. Another thing you see narcissists do is constantly move the goalposts when you're talking about agreements. And what I mean by this is, and listen to me when I tell you this, do not send letters back and forth between your lawyers trying to settle the case. You'll never settle the case with a narcissist that way. And it ends up just being a waste of your time and money. Because what happens is they'll send over a proposal, and even if you agree to 100% of everything they send over, by the time you send over your agreement, they've already changed what the deal is. They'll say, okay, well, yeah, you still have to live up to everything that you just agreed that you're going to give the other person, but now they want more, and they're going to give you less of whatever it was that they were supposed to do. And it just constantly changes, constantly changes, constantly changes, because they get supply out of making you squirm. So while you, as the reasonable person, think that you're working toward a goal of resolving the case, silly, their goal is to manipulate you and make you squirm as much as possible. So you actually don't even have the same goals there. So one of the things you will see them do is constantly move that goalpost, constantly change back and forth. And another thing I will tell you is, do not use a collaborative process. Don't use a collaborative attorney. It's a waste of time when it comes to dealing with narcissists and divorce. And also, don't mediate too early. You're going to need leverage before you go to mediation. And another thing that narcissists do as far as tricks in divorce is they start triangulating, smear campaigns, getting all their flying monkeys lined up, the people that they're turning against you, so that you feel like the world is against you and everybody's believing their lies. So that's another thing that they do. And one other thing that they do is intimidation tactics, scare tactics, try to make you think that you're going to lose your kids, or you're going to have no money, or be out on the street, or that they're going to take everything from you. They're going to use the court system as their sword. They'll use the children as pawns, things like that. I mean, as I said, there's really no bar that's too low. They'll do whatever they can to scare the crap out of you. And if you're dealing with a narcissist in divorce right now and you've already seen them do these things, give me a totally in the comments right now. Okay, so here's what to do to be prepared. Document, document, document. I cannot say it enough. In your documentation, you will end up finding your leverage, I promise. Leverage isn't necessarily always this smoking gun. It is usually made up of many different things, such as lots and lots of text messages, or figuring out when they didn't show up for the kids and how often and what are the percentages, and building a strategy around what kinds of leverage you have. So that's all actually part of my SLAY program. For those of you who are familiar with my program, which is Slay Your Negotiation with a Narcissist. And SLAY actually stands for having a super strong strategy, having invincible leverage, anticipate what the narcissist is going to do and be 2 steps ahead of them, and focusing on you and your case. And so you've got to have this SLAY method together. But the first part of getting that method together is definitely documenting every single thing. You can just have the notes part of your phone open, just assuming that you've changed your passwords and all of that, and just keeping track of absolutely everything. The next thing you can do, I just alluded to, is change your passwords on everything, including all your cloud devices. Anywhere you have a login, make sure you change those passwords. The next thing that you can do to be prepared if you haven't filed for divorce yet is have a stash of cash available, especially if you are the non-moneyed spouse. If it's possible for you to have at least 3 months worth of cash until you can get to a temporary relief hearing. And nowadays, right, the courts are a little bit crazy and they're super backed up. So, who knows when you'll even be able to get a hearing. So you want to have at least a few months worth of living expenses, both to live on and also to be able to hire a lawyer. So the next thing you're going to want to do is figure out a plan. Where are you going to be living? Are you going to stay in the house? Is the other person going to stay in the house? Or are you going to stay there together? If you're going to move out, where are you going to go? How are your expenses going to be paid? If you decide to move out, make sure that you're thinking about a parenting plan if you have children. You want to think about all these things ahead of time. One of my clients who actually left a narcissistic husband too early said that she ended up having to go back. And then he punished her and made it worse. And it was so much worse for the next couple of years. So the next time she left him, she got all her ducks in a row and she knew exactly how she was going to execute it down to the letter. She actually even packed the suitcase and walked out the door while he was sleeping in the middle of the night. And she knew exactly what hotel she was going to. She had directed us exactly what time and where to serve him. She knew she was going to be away for at least 2 weeks after he was served. Then she went and stayed with her mother. She had it all planned out ahead of time. And by the way, she had hired me ahead of time. So that's something else that you should be thinking about is hiring a lawyer and getting the right lawyer, somebody who understands narcissism, who's going to be on your side, who's you're going to feel like you have a rapport with, and who's going to go on the offensive for you, because the nicey nice method when you're dealing with a narcissist doesn't fly. They just see it as weakness and use it as an opportunity to make things worse for you.
Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the first mistakes that people will make.
Well, I would say they haven't maybe released reality yet. They haven't figured it all out. So they have magical thinking. They think that they'll be okay. My ex said everything will be fine. They're not going to hurt them. They'll be fair. Air quotes, fair, right? I mean, getting sucked into that is usually just the blinders for them to like placate you enough to go, oh, they won't hurt me. And then they're hiding the assets, right? It's buying them time. So the magical thinking of that they won't hurt you and they've got your back, if you even suspect that they're a narcissist, then you have to let go of that one, because this is going to be an all-out war. You and I both know, we've seen it 1,000 times, that this is going to be the fight for your life. So if we are delusionally believing that they'll be fair, we're not putting our armor on for war. So we really have to understand that that is not the way to the end for this deal.
Yeah, and here's the thing that I tell people all the time, and I put that in my book too. It's like if they were lying to you during the marriage and you know that they're a liar, and a lot of times people will sit in my office as a lawyer and they'll still tell me all the time they were lying, 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 but well, they're not going to lie to me now. I,
Now
you
they're
know,
better. Yeah.
but now this is going to be fair. Now they do want this to be amicable or whatever. They're not going to suddenly start telling the truth during the discard phase.
Oh no.
I mean, come on, people. This is when it's going to be so much worse.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, wake up.
And they will, sadly, they will wake up, and it will be a smack in the face, because it's reality. And then you're even more wounded and hurt because you had that false hope, right? There's also the belief, if you think about this segment of the people who are going to divorce a narcissist, you know what? I don't want anything. Just take it all. Just, I don't want anything. I'm not going to fight for the house. You just take it. And they think that's also going to get them their way, but
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah,
work out, does it?
no, that doesn't get you anywhere either, because then now you've given up half your leverage or whatever else, and they still won't leave you alone,
Mhm,
because now you think, oh, they're going to see how nice I've been
mhm,
and how good I've been because I gave them, their entire 401k or whatever it is,
mhm,
and or I gave them everything, the whole house and all the contents, and because all I wanted was the kids or whatever. And they don't see how nice you've been. They don't
mhm,
see that as nice. they see
Mhm.
that as, well, that was mine anyway.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, or I gave them their business or whatever. They're just like, so that
Mhm.
was mine anyway.
Right, right.
You
And,
didn't give me anything.
if you think about it too, the other kind of mistake they do is people don't really know everything that's on the plate and they settle before they even know. Like I've had people where the husband might be like this big giant plastic surgeon making millions of dollars a year. And they go, well, that's his business. I won't even bother for it. I'm like, you know, you're entitled to part of that. And they're like, oh, that's too much work. And he won't produce the paperwork anyway. So they walk away from millions of dollars because they're being nice and they think that this is going to help them. It never ends well.
No, it does not. No, because you're giving away their leverage. They're giving away their leverage, right?
Hmm.
And or they think that it's going to be too hard or whatever, and they don't realize that, well, hey, he's going to have to pay the fees anyway,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And they're like, oh, they didn't realize that,
Hmm.
but they didn't, you know, they didn't consult an attorney to find out that that the husband was going to have to pay for the fees anyway on that.
Hmm.
Not only were they entitled to it, but the husband was going to have to pay for the fees on the accountant, the fees on the attorney, and temporary support
Hmm.
along the way. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it goes into that whole, they most of the victims have been gaslit, as you know. And so they've been gaslit very often to the point in the divorce of there's no money. Why are you looking? There's nothing there. There's nothing there, right? Or they gaslight you and say, if you divorce me, you'll never see the children. No judge is gonna let you have the kids. You're crazy. And so they believe that gaslighting and don't ask what their rights are. That's part of this too, is because of the gaslighting, they're frozen deers in the headlight and they're
Hmm.
really afraid to ask for something because they think they'll just be attacked anyway. So again, going back to the I'll just walk away from his business, no problem. Just let me have my kid time or something like that. And that's a problem.
Yeah, that's so true. And they think, well, so I've heard a lot of times people will say, I'm never going to see my kids again. He told me I'll never see my kids again, or if I leave the house, I won't get any part of the house, or something like that, right? And I've many times in an initial client meeting, I would tell the people, I'd be like, well, but if your name is on the house, or, if it was purchased with marital funds, you get your half of the house. I mean, and certainly you're not giving up rights to your children. I mean, most states nowadays are a 50-50. I mean, and so I mean, you're getting your half of the house, you're getting your kids. I mean, and so that's that. And and I remember one time, one of the funniest, it wasn't funny, but it was sort of funny to me. Initial client meetings I ever did was I was representing this emergency room physician, this guy, and after, like, he had been told that, that he was not going to get his kids and all these things because, the wife was a narcissist, and, the same kind of a thing, right? Because it's reversed too. Wives do the same thing to husbands
Absolutely.
all the time. And so afterwards he was like, "Oh my God, I feel so much better." And he's like, "I don't know how I could ever repay you." He's like, "I don't know, but if you ever need a laceration sewn, or"
Such an offer.
it's like, I'm like, "Well, I hope I don't, but thank you."
It's amazing. Again, you made a really important point because so often the women get the narcissist, and that's what's talked about. There's a lot of people that only talk about women and being abused, but the men get abused. And honestly, the cases that I have worked with, the women are worse. They are evil, and they hide behind that cloak of, but I'm the mother and I'm the good, and I'm the president of the PTA. How could I be the evil one, right? But it's the mask. And so the female narcissists tend to really get away with a lot because of their role in the family and the believableness of, well, no, he's the abuser, and it's
Oh,
pointed
yes. I
out, and
call
you're
them
like,
the pearl clutchers. What? Me? I would never. Oh,
oh, I don't do that. Oh,
I it's like, because there's always an element of plausible deniability with the covert narcissist.
mhm,
Oh, could you accuse me of that? I was just, because there's always an element of care
mhm,
in the way a covert narcissist tries to smear, right? So
mhm,
I'm so concerned about about Johnny, and being late so often at work lately. I'm just worried about, just because I'm thinking maybe there's something going on, just because there's probably something with going on at home. Just worried about that. Just concerned, and it's like, oh, probably nothing going on, and probably Johnny's not late that often, or just worried because I'm just thinking maybe he's drinking a lot more lately,
mhm.
and just, oh, I wasn't saying anything, there's just worried.
Yeah,
What? It's just that kind of thing, or it's like the inadvertent email that they left them off of. And so that person didn't make it to the meeting. And oh, I thought I did have you on that meeting. What? Oh my gosh, I don't know how that happened, and that sort of thing with the covert narcissists.
oh yeah, oh yeah. It's always their innocence and their victimhood.
Right, their victimhood. Oh, I definitely thought I had that discovery in there. I don't know how that month got left off. But, right? I mean, it's always, that's why I call them the pearl clutchers. What? What?
I love that. I'm gonna use that. It's my pearls. I like the visual too.
Yeah. What could that be?
Covert narcissists are a breed in their own, and they're much harder to spot. Like, I was married to one, and I thought he was the most charming person on the planet. My entire being to that day of divorce would have said, he would never hurt me. I was one of those people with the false hope because he was selling it to me. I actually recorded a therapy session where he sat there to the therapist going, of course I'll take care of her, she's my wife and I'll take care of my son too, and la 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 la, and then complete implosion. None of that ended up coming true, but that was the lie and I fell for it. I'm like, no, he said, and I believe him because I didn't know what a narcissist was at the time.
Right, because and they are the victim, right? I mean, they're always the one that's the victim, right? And there's always that, that the forgetfulness, they just inadvertently forgot something, or just like underlying rage, that underlying jealousy. It's just under the surface. It's just under the surface that you can't quite pinpoint, because they're the victim. I think the covert narcissists are the worst ones for sure, because everybody else thinks they're so wonderful, they're so kind, they're so they're the humanitarians, they're the ones that show up first at the hospital with the biggest basket, and but nobody else sees what's really going on.
They're the soccer coach, the Girl Scout leader, the president of the PTA, and that is giving them clout in the public eye. Well, they do so much for the Girl Scouts. How could they possibly be evil? Really easily. The door closed, and now they don't have to be the face that the mask was.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's really, really hard. So, I mean, I always tell people that in a divorce, they're the ones that are going to smear. They're the ones that are going to have that element of plausible deniability. They're the ones that are going to be um, uh, just under the radar like that, right? It's that passive aggressive, that um, that that way. Whereas with the grandiose narcissists, they're the ones that will ignore the court orders, that will be much more likely to file the false pleadings, much more likely to be the impulsive, the risk takers. They're easier to spot. They're much easier to spot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And
And
and and and then the malignants are the ones, they're the stalkers. They're the ones that are going to be out there, saying that somebody's a child molester if they're not. They're way easier to spot.
yes, yeah, and but the accusations get bigger. Like the covert the allegations are to destroy you first with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers. That's their goal, is just blow up your entire reputation. But the malignants, they go deeper and they destroy everything. They just, from your where you're going to live to this to that, no security. They're going to go for your jugular and they're going to shake you until your body is gone. And they're just going to keep harping and harping and harping and making up things. As you said, the stalkers, the ones that, hire people, and you see a different car every day outside your house with a long lens aiming at your front door. They're the ones that, change the alarm codes, come in and sit in your driveway and hack into your computers at night. And I even had somebody recently whose car was connected to their Apple Watch, and the husband took over the car somehow with the Apple Watch and was driving the car while she was driving. And it
Yeah.
was, those are the ones that are malignant. They will go to that level of, they don't care. They have absolutely no empathy for you, for the fact, like this guy who had me arrested found out his ex-wife was arrested 3 times. He doesn't care. It's like, yeah, whatever. It validates his point that she was the crazy one by her being in jail three
Right.
times.
Right. Because that's the malignant. Because the covert, they don't want to get caught. They don't want to, like, the coverts want to
They're very
stay
sneaky.
under the radar and stay sneaky because they don't want to necessarily have that mask,
Mhm.
unseen. Whereas the malignants they have that antisocial personality disorder like overlay. So they're like, they just don't stop. They don't stop.
They're like rabid
Right.
dogs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Whereas the grandiose, they're just so in your face and so impulsive and so reckless all the time. They're just so easy to see.
Mhm. Yeah.
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 That's why I think the coverts are the worst ones.
Yeah. Well, because again, we don't see them coming. Well, most victims believed the lie. That's why I started with that sort of magical thinking. You're holding on to the person you thought they were, and, dismissing a lot of the bad behaviors you've probably seen, that all of a sudden you're going to like have all these eureka moments and go, oh my God, that was abuse. Oh, of course they did that. Yeah, they never let me have any money. Oh yeah, all the pieces start to come together, because they were so sneaky. They were so charming, and the abuse was done behind door and very stealthily. So, that's where the danger is that we think we're dealing with the good guy or a good girl, and that's not what's going to happen. Again, the war is on and you're in a battle, and you have to not believe their lies.
Yeah, so true. And don't ever think that you're going to go to mediation early and you're going to get it done and go have, the collaborative divorce and all of that. That's such a waste of time and a waste of money.
Mhm.
Such a waste of time. And I always tell people not to like have your lawyers do settlement proposals back and forth. That's a big fat waste of time and money. You're never going to settle your case like that ever.
So, narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder that affects so many people, and it's a stealth kind of personality disorder that most people don't even understand or see until the evil part of it arrives. These people that have this have no sense of value of other people. They really don't hold anything of value to anybody. They are abusive, and they don't start out that way. They start out extremely charming. They start out where they are sudden soulmates with someone, and most of the time while they're in a relationship, their neighbors, their friends, their coworkers will never see the signs that they are being abusive at home.
Now, Tracy, I know you mentioned on your website and in your podcast that you yourself are a survivor of several relationships with narcissists. And this is what's led you to be so passionate about educating people on the topic. Would you mind sharing a little bit of your personal story? Because I think it will sound familiar to many of our listeners.
Sure. I did not know what narcissistic personality disorder was, or that there were people out there that were this crazy. And yet, when I learned about it because I had been in a marriage, and my divorce was just like the things that kept getting thrown at me, the lies, and now I know them as gaslighting, the things that were coming at me, I didn't understand them at all. So I had just gone through this horrific divorce without a label, without understanding, just really confused as to what the heck happened. And I went into a rather quick relationship after that. I was swooped up by another narcissist, only this one was the reason I came to learn all about this. He had me arrested falsely, which is something that happens a lot with victims, because a narcissist will revert to anything that will kind of take you out of the way, get you out of their hair, and without any care or concern for anyone. So once I started to learn about that, for him, people said, look up gaslighting, he's gaslighting you. I looked it up, and it explained my whole divorce. It explained my mother-in-law, my sister's, my own mother. So there was a reason I didn't see this type of behavior. It was because I grew up with people that would ghost me. And I was used to my sisters just disappearing off the face of the earth for no reason at all. And so when I was in a relationship, that just was like, oh, that's not how normal people are in a relationship. So learning about it and trying to understand it, it put me into this seems like it's a calling for me to stand on a soapbox and never stop talking about it, never stop learning, and never stop teaching about it.
Well, first of all, I just want to congratulate you for not continuing to be in that victim mentality, to see this as a calling, to see this as an opportunity. That's what we really want our entire show to be about, that the divorce and the bad things that happen as a result of divorce are actually opportunities for growth and change. So I'm really, I'm impressed that that's what you see it as, and as a result have obviously helped many, many people. So I want to ask you about the warning signs of narcissists and how you can spot them. But if you could, just before you get to that, just give a little bit of a definition on gaslighting, because I don't know that everyone knows exactly what that is. And you did mention that term. So if you could just give a definition of gaslighting, and then go into what the red flags are for narcissists.
Sure. Gaslighting is a way that they try to manipulate the victim to think they're crazy. That means they're telling you stories that simply didn't happen, and insisting that you're the crazy one, that you don't remember it happening that specific way. So it challenges your mind to really dig deep and question, did that happen? And over time, they slowly wear you down to the point where you are questioning yourself. And most survivors that I talk to just sit there with this dumbfounded look on their faces going, I know that didn't happen, and yet he's convinced me, or she's convinced me over and over, and finally they give up. There's no hope for them, and they just give up the reality that they thought was real, and they've lost themselves. So it feels really icky, if you would say. It feels that you have no control over what's going to happen. And of course, you're walking on eggshells during that, because if you say, no, that's not how I remember it, you'll generally be met with anger. You'll be met with the conflict of the story, and they're telling you, no, this isn't how it is, and you're crazy. How could you believe that? How could you, don't you remember? And it's that kind of wearing down of a person that is their intention. There's a great movie from the 1940s called Gaslighting. And if you haven't seen it, it's really creepy with the old music that they used to play in the background. But the man would actually hide things on his wife and then ask her where her pearl necklace was. And when she would go look for it, she'd be like, oh no, he's going to get so mad at me that I've lost it. But he was like manufacturing this lie, manufacturing her to think that she was crazy. And that's what gaslighting is.
Can I ask, do the narcissists, the people doing the crazy making, coming up with this alternate version of what happened, do they know they're doing it? Is it like is this a plan on their part? I know in that movie, I've seen that movie, and it is fascinating, but that was a very well thought out, plan to make that person think they were going crazy. Do narcissists know what they're doing?
I believe they do, yes, because they're creating this alternate reality. And do they know that they're doing it to mess with your mind? That's to be debated. Do they stick to a story that they believe is true and just push that on? Yes, they do. So I believe that they are doing it intentionally, and there's a maliciousness to it. It's about taking away someone's power. And gaslighting, as all abuse is control. So once they know that they can control you by convincing you of something that didn't happen, then they can control you about every other thing in their life and in your life. So it's a step ladder, if you would, to further and further abuse. If they are not able to mind control you, because that's what gaslighting is, if they're not able to do that, you probably will not be in the relationship very long, because they're looking for someone that they can control. So as soon as you see this reality, which generally happens at the end, at the discard, there's 3 stages of abuse. So it's idealization, and then it's devalue, and after that comes the discard. And most people don't see this kind of behavior until they're out of it, or on the other side looking in going, oh, that's what that was. And so I do believe that they know it and they see it, because it's just, okay, if I can check that box that I got that person to accept this story that I told them, they've got one more step on the control ladder for you.
So back to, I think, Rebecca's question there then. So when someone's getting into a relationship or is in a relationship that's tortured, what are the warning signs or red flags?
Well, there's hundreds of them. There's behavior red flags. There's action red flags. At the beginning, they're certainly different, because the charm that these people have is what captivates everyone. Nobody goes into a relationship going, I want to be with the devil. They just don't. They come into it because the person is everything they've ever dreamed of. And that's part of the red flag kind of abusive behavior, where seems so natural to be sharing your story with the new person in your life, to share every detail that's happened to you before. But what they're doing is they're actually making a list of everything that has happened to you, knowing that they can also get away with it because you didn't see it. So when you're going into a relationship, it's important to know that anyone who rushes intimacy, rushes that relationship. I've heard people get married in 2 months, and it was so whirlwind and it was so amazing. And yet the second they got married, like, the person completely changed. So it's in that stage. If they're not patient with you and not willing to give you the time, that's a sign that they're trying to rush you to confuse you. By rushing someone into something and making them feel so wonderful, on a normal spectrum, that would be a great thing. But on an abusive schedule, that's where they're really just figuring out how to abuse you. And you'll start to see holes in the story. So lies are like gaslighting, lies that just don't make sense. And if they've told you one thing and yet the reality is something else, that's a huge red flag for someone to look at in a relationship. And if they start to isolate you, it's so stealth. You don't really think, oh gosh, he's cutting off my family. But slowly but surely, they pluck off your friends and they go for the weak ones first. When they meet your friends and your family, they're interviewing them too. How is your alliance? How strong are they going to defend and stick up for you? If your family or your friends say, well, she's a very good storyteller, they're going to use that against you later. So they're gathering intel from your friends. And then if your friends and family can be coerced later into becoming what we call flying monkeys, which is kind of like the witch and the Wizard of Oz used the monkeys to do her bidding. That's what flying monkeys are in a narcissistic kind of relationship. But as you're dating and you're interviewing this person, red flags to look for is are there a lot of crazy people in their life? Is their ex a crazy ex? Are they an alcoholic, drug addict? There's a whole list of things that they will, instantly attach to their ex. That's not normal. If everyone in their past is crazy, probably why would they be there? There's something you have to look at. If they experience and display anger towards you for questioning them, they don't like to be questioned. And of course, in the beginning, you're not necessarily questioning, you're believing that love story. You're not going, well, that doesn't make sense. But if you start to question those things, then, and they get angry, that's definitely a sign that you have to watch out for. And if you feel like any single fight could end a relationship, then that's not a good feeling either. That's not something that you should be thinking is a good, healthy relationship.
You're getting ready to divorce a narcissist. Maybe you're in the process of divorcing a narcissist, and you're scared to death that the narcissist is going to use the court system as a sword. Or what does that even mean, that they use the court system as a sword? When they go to divorce, they are now in what we call the discard phase. And if you want to know about the 3 different phases of a narcissistic relationship, which is love bomb, devalue, and discard, check out my videos on love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. But once you get into the discard phase, it's really the birth of the smear campaign. They can start this process months and months and months before the divorce has even been filed. They just start dropping these little breadcrumbs around to their flying monkeys or to the other people that they want to line up to be on their side, because they're just starting to plant these little seeds that there's something wrong with you. So for example, they'll say, Mary had a little too much to drink at the party. And they say that like 6 months before the divorce was even filed, because they're kind of starting to see the writing on the wall. And so they just start to say these little things like, oh, I'm kind of worried about her. They put it in this terms of, oh, I'm so worried about that person. And then boom, once the divorce starts, they are now suddenly asking for sole custody or supervised time sharing, or they want a custody evaluation, something like that. And it's like the craziest thing. So I have a situation like that right now with one of my clients. My client is the husband, and the two of them are in the same exact profession, and they even own the business together. They have 3 children together. They have shared custody. I mean, even when they were still married, they shared responsibilities. Both of them were taking the children to various sports events. Both of them were making dinner for the children. Both of them were helping with homework. Both of them were equally involved in the children's lives. So I crazily thought, oh, we'll start this case and it'll be no problem. Since they're in the same profession, we're just going to be drafting a marital settlement agreement. I'm sure it'll just be 50-50 custody. There won't be any alimony issues. But no, she goes and hires a lawyer that likes to help people use the court system as a sword and weaponize the court system. And suddenly the woman, the wife, filed a motion for a custody evaluation, and now all of a sudden she's withholding time sharing from my client. All of a sudden, when the case starts, he's a terrible parent. He beats the children. He does all of these things. Meanwhile, right up until the day that she filed the petition, they were sharing all the responsibilities for the child. But now here she is using the court system as her sword, weaponizing the court system to gain leverage over my client, to show that she's the one in control, to show that she's the one with the power, to show that she's the one that can make him squirm. Because remember, narcissists need an endless amount of supply. Supply is their food source, their oxygen, it's what they live on. So they get supply from jerking people around. It sounds like the craziest thing. When you're going to try to resolve a case, a divorce case, or any kind of issue, any kind of dispute with a narcissist, and you are a reasonable person, you are not on the same page, because that narcissist is not looking for an ending of the situation. The narcissist is looking for a way to continue to jerk you around. So while you're going, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why are we throwing all this money at this situation? Well, the reason why is because they are enjoying the process. They'll tell you that they aren't. They'll tell you it's your fault that it's taking so long. They'll tell you that you are the reason that they had to do all these things, because they had to save their children by asking for sole custody, or save their children for asking for supervised time sharing. But that's not what they really want to do. What they really want to do is jerk you around. I've actually had clients where they were the ones who were the narcissists tell me, I'd rather pay you than her. I'd rather keep the lawyer working and doing things to make the other person miserable than to actually resolve the case. Sounds crazy, but it's not crazy when you know what the motivation is behind it. And if you don't want this to happen to you, I want to see an I'm fighting back in the comments. If you are dealing with this and you're seeing this narcissist using the court system as a sword, or you think that they're going to be using the court system as a sword, there's only one way to get back at this, and that is to shift the dynamic, turn the tables, because you're going to feel like you're being pelleted with ammunition all over the place. They're going to use every single thing they can in their arsenal to make your life as miserable as possible. So you're just going to be sitting there defending. It's like you're trying to get yourself out of a paper bag. So the only thing you can do is use my SLAY method, which of course I have a whole course on, slay your negotiation with a narcissist, but understand that SLAY stands for strategy, leverage, anticipating what the narcissist is going to do, and focusing on you and your case. And that's the only way you're going to do it, and you need to go on the offensive. And maybe even use the court system as your own sword, but in a way that ethically manipulates the manipulator, in a way that makes them think that you are potentially going to be interrupting their source of supply, so that they feel threatened. Because the only way that you're going to get them to stop using the court system as their weapon, as their sword to make you crazy and use it as a form of getting supply for themselves, is by fighting back, is by going on the offensive, is by threatening their source of supply, by saying, okay, potentially you're going to look bad if you do this, that, or the other thing. Creating leverage against them. You know, inside my course, I give like 30 different examples of leverage, because that's like so important. I also have a whole video on it. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you check out my video on how to create leverage and what is leverage when you're dealing with a narcissist. And we'll drop a link to that below as well. The main thing that you need to remember is they will use the court system as their sword, as a weapon, as a means to make you crazy. Just expect it. Don't be surprised when they do that. But you need to have a plan of attack, a plan to fight back, a plan that has you controlling the process instead of them. When it comes time to get a divorce, people will threaten. People will say things like, you know, you can't ever divorce me, because if you do, I'll make sure you never get a dime. I'll make sure you're out on the street. You know, you're never going to get anything from me. And so people are paralyzed. They're paranoid that they're never going to get anything. And so they end up staying in abusive situations because of that. So, and you know, I know for me, a lot of times as an attorney, I'll say, you know, hey, listen, you know, there are laws around that, especially if you're the non-moneyed spouse. You know, you can, many times, if you go to a lawyer, there are protections in the law, you know, where you can potentially get, you know, either fees, you can get support, you can get temporary support, but a lot of times people don't know that. And so what would you say to people around that?
So I think the first thing that people need to do is to seek out a trusted attorney. That's the first thing. I mean, you should, you know, consult several attorneys, speak to other people who have gone through divorces, see who they recommend. Look online and see what kind of reviews an attorney has. Look at their LinkedIn, see what articles they've published, what's their point of view, all of those types of things. And then you need to understand that the law, particularly, I don't know about every state, but I do know certainly in New York, the non-moneyed spouse does have the protections that you're talking about, Rebecca. The non-moneyed spouse is going to likely be entitled to what is called pendente lite relief, right? And pendente lite relief, in essence, is temporary relief, temporary support to make sure that you can pay your reasonable expenses, temporary legal fees so that your attorney can get paid, and so that you are essentially on that equal playing field. But you also need to start to pull some documents, right? So you need to, if you can, make sure that you can get hold of your tax returns, make sure that you have bank statements, credit card statements. You know, years ago, I had a client, and I often talk about her because she was really quite intelligent. And what she did was she would essentially go through the garbage, believe it or not. And she would pull all these little bits and pieces of paper. And pretty soon she had what was the beginning of the puzzle, right? And we did all of this discovery in her case, but most of the discovery came from her. So she would find this piece of paper that referred to some account that was offshore. And then we would do the digging. And I remember having her husband in a deposition, and he had revealed zero. I mean zero. His net worth statement, which is something that people fill out at the very beginning of a case in order to, for example, get pendente lite support, but also to create this roadmap, his net worth statement was void of any information. And I remember during the deposition saying to him, how did you expect that I was going to find all of the assets that I have found? And he said, I thought you would just keep doing what you're doing. You would keep subpoenaing, and you would keep digging, and you would keep looking, and then you'll find it. And that became the job. But she herself was very resourceful. And it's important that, as you know, as a spouse, that you look, that you keep your eyes open, that you watch what's happening around you, because you can't live essentially in a shell, right, with everything closed up. You need to keep your eyes open.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing is that you do need to have some stash of cash, because you're going to need to be able to hire that lawyer. And it does take time to get that hearing, to get to that first hearing.
100%.
You talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. So look, some people have situations where they're able to turn to family or friends for that first retainer. And that first retainer is essentially, it's that door opening, right? So that you can start to pay an attorney to make the motions or the applications to the court in order to get you that temporary support, those temporary legal fees, to get you set up essentially for the process that is going to occur, right? Where there'll be discovery, where there will be negotiations, and where there may be things like depositions or other court appearances, etc. But you're right. You need to have that door be open. And so you either need to put aside cash and open a bank account so that you can, over time, essentially save up for your retainer, or at least be honest with friends or family and say, look, I'm going to need some help here. I might need to take a loan. I might need to sign a promissory note to you so that I can get myself on my feet again, and maybe help my children as well, because it may be that your spouse is not, giving you sufficient funds to pay not only for your support, but also for your children's support.
Right, exactly. Number one, you've got to have a clear strategy. It's better be crystal clear, and it better be strong, and it better be powerful. You better to be ready to go on the offensive and have your leverage ready. You better do your research, do your homework, have everything you need to incentivize that other side to want to come to a resolution with you. Even if you say, I don't want to fight, I want it to be amicable, great. But if you've got a narcissist on the other side, they don't feel the same way. All right. So if you want them to come to that nice, easy conclusion, then you're going to have to incentivize them to do that. And the only way you can do that is by getting leverage. I have a video on how to negotiate with a narcissist specifically. You're going to definitely want to check that out, and I will drop a link to that below. Okay, number two, you're going to want to pick a really strong lawyer, and you're going to want to pick a lawyer that knows what he or she is doing. Make sure that they know what type of person that they're going to be dealing with, so that they can help you develop that strategy that I talked about in step number one. And related to this step number two, by the way, is to make sure you pick a lawyer that you're really going to trust, and then trust that lawyer. Because what your narcissist, soon to be ex, is going to do is try to get you to distrust your lawyer. That person is going to say your lawyer's only out for whatever, or only money, or to break us up, or whatever it is. But if you are dealing with a narcissist, that person is probably a pathological liar. And so why would they start telling the truth now? So the only reason they want your lawyer out of the picture is because then they can drive that wedge in there and get control back over you again. So once you pick a lawyer that you really like and you can trust, listen to him or her, okay? Okay, number three thing that you can do is document everything in writing. He or she is going to say to you, oh, let's just meet at Starbucks. Let's just have a conversation. We don't need all this stuff. So that's the kind of thing they're going to do. And then every single thing you say will have ended up being twisted. And you're going to be gaslighted, and they're going to be saying, oh, we had this conversation and you agreed to X, Y, Z, or they're going to send you an email afterwards saying, oh, and we agreed to X, Y, and Z, and you never had that conversation, right? So that's what they're going to do. Make sure everything's in writing as absolutely much as possible, because they're going to try to manipulate you anyway, but at least you can try to minimize it. And that's what we're talking about here. You're not going to be able to change the other person. The other person is who they are, but you can do things to try to protect yourself and be feeling like you're on the offensive rather than on the defensive the whole time. Okay, and number four thing that you can do is keep your cool. You're going to want to keep your emotions in check. It's one of my 6 steps of winning in any negotiation, and I'll go ahead and put a link to that video as well. But you're definitely going to want to keep your emotions in check, because that's what they want. They want you to lose your cool. They want to get under your skin. And as soon as you allow them to do that, now they're already winning again. Now it's working, whatever manipulation it is that they're trying to pull on you. So keep your cool, keep your emotions in check, and don't let them get the best of you. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about the types of tricks that your former husband played in the divorce, and then we can talk about what's going on with them psychologically, from the psychological perspective when all that's happening.
Right. I know that very quickly, he weaponized my children. He knew that that was the one way to hurt me. He knew that that was my biggest button. I always tell people, figure out what their biggest buttons are, their biggest triggers. I know you call it leverage and, that type of thing. And that, it's so true. I knew very early on that money was his button. um, One of the things I was up against is that I've always maintained my custody battle wasn't just with him, it was with his mom. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
with his dad, who both had standings in our community. They had founded a local Catholic high school. They had, their roots in pretty deep here. And so he went on a smear campaign telling, we were active in the business community, telling everybody that I had, had affairs. I've never cheated on anyone in my life. And so it was painful at the time, but he knew that my kids were the way to hurt me. And so not telling me where they were going to be on visits. He would give me addresses, and they were always in gated communities, so I couldn't access the house. But I remember having a realtor friend take me in because I knew he was lying about where he was keeping my kids, and I was completely distraught. um, we would go to the address and it would be an empty dirt lot in a gated community.
Oh,
And
God.
and the court just kept giving him so much grace. They would give me almost like he had just made a mistake giving me the address, and then it would be 2 or 3 different fake addresses to where the court finally started cracking down on him. But we the court in the beginning, for the first, I'd say 2 years, lumped us both into the high conflict category.
It's
And I
very
didn't.
common.
Absolutely. And so, we would go into the courtroom and the judge would look at me and go, Swithin, what are you on the docket for today? And I'd be like, well, like, I'm here to protect my kids. And we were in court a lot. 2012, filed, I took him to court 13 different times. And my mentality was, if you're not going to protect my kids this month, I'm going to just keep coming back over and over again, because I need to lay my head down on that pillow knowing that I've done everything in my power this week to protect them. And he was putting them in dangerous situations and, never knowing where they were. He has family members who are very dysfunctional. It was a big part of my battle trying to protect my kids from people in his family. And so he had a high off of using them to just torment me, and it was painful. I'm so thankful that we aligned with therapists early on for my kids, even, who understood what I was up against. I know how blessed I am with that, because and I do feel that so much of it is in how you present yourself, and I was very careful to remove myself from the conflict and tell them, I don't care if you believe his story or my story. That's not what I'm here for. I need my little girls to have tools to navigate what I'm having a hard time navigating as a 40-year-old woman. And so I'm incredibly thankful that we had people, but that wasn't always the case. We went through 2 full custody evaluations here in California. Minors counsel was appointed. I had CPS involved in my case 3 times, and 90% of those people completely failed my kids. And my battle, so my,
Tell more about that. Like, in what way? How did they fail them?
CPS, in my opinion, the most broken agency in this whole family court arena. My kids were almost drowned in a swimming pool. I feel like my ex-husband is more in the sociopathic category. To this day, I feel like it was not accidental
Oh,
that
God.
they almost drowned. And he admitted that they almost drowned. CPS was called. They gave him a pamphlet on pool safety, and closed it unfounded, even though he admitted that they almost drowned. He left my daughter in a car for 45 minutes while he watched a triathlon on TV in a gym, when she had just been released from the hospital after having a 45-minute seizure with orders to never leave her alone. She was 4. And he admitted that he left her in a car with the windows cracked for 45 minutes. And they gave him a slap on the wrist and said, or hand, and said, let's talk about car safety. You can't leave kids in a car. And they closed it unfounded. So
Was this before or after the pool incident? I mean, come
that
on.
that was before the pool incident. And then he physically assaulted my older daughter when she was 7, grabbed her by the arm. I went to the police station with her, marked it as unfounded. They did label him a moderate risk, but they did nothing. And so, it just, in our first custody evaluation, I was so new into this and still had not connected all of the dots that the reason my case was so high conflict was because he was a narcissist. I just thought, what the hell? I just feel like I don't even understand. I'm in some warped reality. And, the first custody evaluator, I was not, at that point, I hadn't established patterns of behavior to truly explain to her what was going on and to articulate the issues. And she was just, a lot of them, the second they get a case, their goal is to close it and be done with it. And they don't really do the work. And I think that, the threshold of what's acceptable when it comes to parenting for me is a heck of a lot different than the rest of the family court system.
Well, I think the problem with anything like CPS or agencies like that is that they're so used to seeing, the kids who are living in complete squalor. They're just used to going in, let's check to make sure there's food in the refrigerator, and something like that. And so when they see upper middle class or middle class family who the parents are going through a bad divorce, it's like, ugh, here we go again. They're just trying to use us as leverage to try to gain some kind of advantage in the divorce, and let's just get this thing off of our thing. And it's the same thing with judges, quite frankly. I mean, judges are evaluated based on how quickly they move their cases off their docket. They're also evaluated on how often they're appealed. And they have way too many cases on their docket. They're already super backlogged, and hundreds of cases are being filed every single month in every single jurisdiction, maybe even thousands depending on where people live. And there's only a handful of judges on the family law bench. Most of the judges who sit on the family law bench don't even want to be on the family law bench. They're rotated through different sections of the court system, and family law is the one that nobody wants. And so there's a few family law judges that are devoted to family law, and they stay in the family law arena for a long time, and then those are the ones that end up writing textbooks and things like that. But for the most part, and there are a few that were family law attorneys, but for the most part, you're getting judges who don't understand family law. They don't want to be there. They have too many cases, and they just want to move them along. And they just see two people who are fighting. They're just like, oh, here we go again. Two people who are fighting.
And I think a lot of them are so highly narcissistic themselves that they can't even recognize the issues in front of them because it so closely relates to who they are.
Oh, that's so true too.